Oh, hello. It's Spirit House, and I'm reading tonight The Secret of Light by Walter Russell, and it's part three. We are beginning part three of The Secret of Light, and it's called The Mystery of Gravitation and Radiation, Omnipresence, the Universe of Being. And it begins with captions from the Divine Iliad. In my universe, there is but one form from which all forms appear. That one form is the pulsing cube sphere, sphere, two halves of the heartbeat of my dual thinking. All forms pulse, therefore all forms are two. One form for the in-breathing pulse, which generates, and one for the out-breathing, radiating one. The cube is the sphere expanded by the outward breath to black rest in cold space. And the sphere is the cube, compressed to the incandescence of white-hot suns by the inward breath. All spheres emerge from the pulsing, breathing cubes of space and return to them to find fulcrums of rest for re-emergence. Behold, I center one form where it seeks rest in me from the action of my thinking, and I envelop that form with its other half where it may again find rest in me as another fulcrum for expression of my thinking. These two sexed halves extend from me and return to me, but they are not me, nor are they two halves of one, for they never can be two halves of one. They are always two and never one. Nor can they unite nor meet, for their ways are opposed ways which never meet, for each one voideth each other in their seeming meeting. Behold, I am within all things, centering them, and I am without all things, controlling them. But I am not those things which I center and control. From the Divine Iliad. And another caption. See thou that man knows that each divided light of his conditioning, which extends from me to him, is balanced always, for I am balance. And that is truth and the law, for I am truth and the law. Say thou to him, each thing is everything and each is everywhere. For I say that all things are the same thing, for all things are universal. Each thing reaches through every other thing to the farthermost star. For this purpose have I set my mirrors and my lenses of dual light to attain an infinity in my imaged universe in which no measure is. And I also say that man's infinity ends in eyes of man where it began. All things in my mirrored universe end where they began. Eternity thus ends now, and now in eternity. See thou that man well knows the illusions which deceive his sense-seeing. Point out to him my mirrors and my lenses which curve my universe of seeming into image spheres of my thinking as seed for multiplying one into many ones. Say thou to him, all things occupy the same space, and each thing occupies all space. All things extend from all things and are extensions of all things. Likewise, I say, all things center all things and are involved in all things. Say thou these things in words of man's knowing, and say thou that I, the light, center him in all things else, for I am everywhere. From the Divine Iliad. And then another caption from the Divine Iliad. Again, I say that all things extend to all things from all things and through all things. For to thee I again say, all things are light, and light separates not, nor has it bounds, nor is it here and not there. Man may weave the pattern of his self in light of me, and of his image in divided lights of me, even as the sun sets up its bow of many hues from divided light of me. But man cannot be apart from me, as the spectrum cannot be apart from the light of me. And as the rainbow is a light within the light, inseparable, so is man's self within me, inseparable. And so is his image my image. Verily I say, every wave encompasseth every other wave unto the one, and the many are within the one, even down to the least of the waves of me. And I say further that everything is repeated within every other thing unto the one. And furthermore I say that every element which man thinketh of as of itself alone is within every other element, even to the atom's veriest unit. And he actually demonstrated this. He was able to produce every element from one element in the witness of other people. And that's my side note. Through alchemy. When man queries thee in this wise, sayest thou that in this iron there is gold and all things else, thou mayest answer, within the sphere and encompassing it is the cube and every other form that is, and within the cube and encompassing it is the sphere and every other form that is. From the Divine Iliad. The magnetic electric universe in postulates and diagrams. God is light. God is love. God's creating universe is founded on love. It is creating with light. The principle of love is desire to give. God gives love by extending his light. God's love is a mirror of light which reflects his giving of love by the re-giving of love. Excuse me. The law of love is rhythmic, balanced interchange between all givings and re-givings. The symbol of love is the wave of dual light which gives and re-gives equally and rhythmically. This is a dual electric wave universe of interchanging light. God's love is everywhere. His light is everywhere. There is naught but good in God's omniscient universe. Evil is a product of man's thinking. God extends his love, his power, and his knowing radially from 0 points of omnipresent stillness to other 0 points in the measure of his desire to give form to his imaginings. The intensity of desire extended from creating points of rest to extended points of rest determines the dimension of desire. This radial universe. The entire mechanical principle of nature, by means of which its light illusions of motion are produced, is the consequent effect of such radial extensions. Because of it, the seeming multiplication and division of the universal equilibrium into the opposed electrical pressures of gravitation and radiation, which form the foundation of this whole universe of change, are made possible. God's imaginings extend from rest to rest in his three-dimensional radial universe of length, breadth, and thickness, to become the stage of space for his imagined radial universe of matter, time, change, and motion. Points of rest, further extended to other points of rest, form 3 reflecting planes of still magnetic light. And that's going to be repeated a lot throughout part 3, is still magnetic light, because that is God, which are at right angles to each other. From the center of these 3 mirror planes of 0 curvature, God's givings are radially projected to 6 opposed mirror planes for reprojection as re-givings, to unfold and refold the forms of God's imaginings in the curved electric universe of his desiring. And I'll share the figures I'll share the figures. I'll figure out, because there's figures to each of these sentences. There's actual diagrams to help, have a visual of what he's talking about here. Okay, birth of wave fields. The desire of God to give his love is manifested in projected action as an outward explosion from a centering point of rest acting as a fulcrum. The desire to re-give is simultaneously radared back from every point of its progress to refold the unfolding action. All action in nature is forever disappearing into a mirror of its own image of equal potential. figures 5 and 6. Every projected action in nature, which is simultaneously radared back to its reprojected reaction, is sequentially repeated as a similar echo from its wave field boundary planes of zero curvature. Figure 7. All actions in nature are outward explosions, slow actions of growing things, or fast actions of released dynamite or atom bomb. Conversely, all reactions are inward explosions. Actions unfold formlessness into form. Reactions refold form into formlessness. Actions are the basis of radiation. Reactions are the basis of gravitation. Every action anywhere is repeated everywhere throughout the universe. As a consequence, harmonic centers of the same measure of desire extend their actions outward from their centers toward other harmonic centers. Harmonic explosions of equal measure thus fill all space in God's omnipresent universe. Figure 9. Outward explosions which meet each other cannot be spheres, for all space must be filled. Tennis balls crushed together become cubes by gradually flattening where they meet at 6 points on curved surfaces. Likewise, outer explosions flatten into the 6 planes of cubes. Figure 10. Outward-inward explosions are resisted at their maximum in the direction of the 6 points where spheres meet. They are consequentially deflected to the 8 points of least resistance, which become diagonals of cubes instead of radii of spheres. Figure 11. 8 directions of two-way expressed force are thus generated, which become the basis of the octave wave. And the 9 octave waves of creation are everything. Within them lies, I'm just saying this as a side note, all of the octave tones, which sound, it was actually sound first and then light, in my opinion, and from what I've studied. But then there's light. But then there's also every single element and gaseous element, or the potential for that, contained within each octave wave of the creation of the universe. So all of the elements, everything that created all the suns, the planets, everything is contained within the octave waves of creation. So I just wanted to add that as a side note. Outward-inward explosions projected through each other develop 2 opposed pressures. The outward direction divides its potential by expanding it radially. The inward direction multiplies it by compressing it radially. Thus, the 2 opposite plus and minus equilibrium conditions are produced which motivate this electric universe of two-way motion, give to it its heartbeat, and produce all effects of illusion caused by the interchange of the 2 conditions of matter. The cube sphere. Pairs of interchanging opposed conditions are born from each other and become each other as a consequence of that interchange, as all opposites in nature are likewise born. The cube and the sphere are the 2 opposites of form from which all forms of all things are born. They are the only forms ever created, being father-mother of all forms. The sphere and the cube both manifest the cosmic principle of balance. Their position in light waves is in the one balanced position in the wave, where compression and expansion have ceased to oppose each other, which is at wave amplitude known as trough or crest. Carbon and sodium chloride are good examples of true cube crystallization. Likewise, their atomic units are true spheres. Sodium iodide, or sodium bromide, do not crystallize in true cube because of their unbalanced positions near, but not upon, the plane of wave amplitude. The cube and sphere are one, being 2 opposite phases of the same thing. The cube is the sphere extended to black coldness, while the sphere is the cube contracted to white incandescence. Every true sphere in every light wave is an incandescent sun, regardless of its dimension. Prolating spheres, such as our sun, are becoming incandescent inward toward their centers, while ablating spheres, such as our planets, are becoming cold inward toward their centers. The cube is born from the sphere to fulfill the desire of the Creator to produce form by projecting light from incandescence toward the cold dark of the heavens. Conversely, the sphere is born from the cube to fulfill the other desire for oneness by reprojecting cold dark from the heavens to light in the seed. The creation of all forms of matter is an eternal interchange between the father light of incandescent spheres and the mother light of cold cubes. All forms are born in the direction of the coldness of space and are voided in the direction of incandescence. Every creating body is set out into space from its crucible in the sun to cool into the form appropriate to its extension from the sun. That is but one half of the cyclic journey of every body from the sun and back to it. And here come, these make up all the Platonic solids. This is another side note of mine, but if you have read about Platonic solids or read of Plato, then you would know what I'm talking about. And that's what this makes up. But within the cube and the sphere, every Platonic solid can be created, and touch each a wall of each, if you understand, if that makes sense. Anyway, so I'll continue. The other half of the cycle is to return to the sun to void the body of its form for the purpose of acquiring a new body. Every cycle of motion is a journey from heat to cold and back again. All bodies are formed by freezing and voided by melting. The freezing and melting points of all bodies are dependent upon their respective densities and electric conditioning. The sphere is the clay of earths, the light of suns, and the formlessness of seed. It is the womb from which the clay of the earth extends into the cube-bound heavens to expand into form. It is the tomb within which all form is voided for re-giving to the heavens as a new form. Every form of nature is either becoming a cube or a sphere, or is a section of either one. And side note, henceforth the Platonic solids. Complex bodies are multiples of spheres of matter surrounded by multiples of cubes of space and multiples of wave fields. All crystal shapes are sections of cubes. Their shapes are determined by their position in their wave field. Figure 15. The cubes of space are wave fields which bound all interchanging motion between the two conditions within it. Motion cannot pass through these planes, but can be reflected symmetrically back or extended symmetrically toward the center of the adjoining wave field. Within each cube field is the curved universe of two-way light illusion, and beyond, to the farthest reaches of space, is a repetition of illusion from wave field to wave field at the rate of 186,400 miles per second. That is the speed in which every action-reaction anywhere repeats itself everywhere. This illusion of motion gives rise to the belief that light travels. It does not travel, by the way. Wave field boundary planes of a zero curvature insulate all effects of motion, which take place within it, from every other wave field. Centering the wave field is the incandescent sphere which mates it. The potential of the entire field is divided equally between its centering spheres of multiplied matter and the surrounding space of divided matter. Each mate of each wave field in the universe is balanced with its opposite mate, even to the weight of one electron. The reason why the centering sphere is of high potential and its surrounding space is of low potential is due to a difference of volume. The centering sphere may be a few thousand miles in diameter and its surrounding space many millions of miles in diameter, yet they are equal, potential for potential, but unequal volume for volume. Neither of these mates could sustain its separateness of condition unless it constantly interchanged to give all of itself to the other alternately in repetitive cycles. Spheres must give to cubes of space by breathing out to discharge themselves and charge space. Space must then re-give to spheres, by breathing out from itself to discharge itself and recharge spheres. Each short cycle of interchange is accumulated into longer life-death cycle in which solids entirely disappear into space and space interchanges its potential to become solids. This principle constitutes the forever inside-out and outside-in turnings of nature, by means of which all forms sequentially appear, disappear, and reappear. The inbreathing of spheres generates low potential into high. The generative process of nature is gravitation. The outbreathing of spheres radiates high potential into low. The degenerative process of nature is radiation. Multiplication and division of expressed energy into the high and low potential of gravitation and radiation is made possible by the plan of nature, which causes all actions of nature to extend radially from omnipresent points of magnetic light. Gravitation pulls spirally inward from within to wind light waves into solids to center space. Radiation thrusts spirally outwards to unwind dense solids into space to surround solids. Each is an equal reaction of the other. Each becomes the other sequentially. Gravitation is the positive electric principle which exerts its pressures centripetally towards the maximum incandescent points of compression in every wave field. It is the father principle of nature, the integrating principle of, quote, uphill flow of energy, unquote, which forever balances its, quote, downhill flow, unquote. And there's a diagram in figure 16, and I'm going to try my best to share the diagrams from the book. Radiation is the negative electric principle which exerts its pressures centrifugally towards its wave field boundary planes of magnetic light. It is the mother principle of nature, the disintegrating principle of, quote, downhill flow of energy which forever balances its, quote, uphill flow, unquote. The Creator extends power of motion to the Creator expends power of motion to but one half of a cycle for each of the two opposite manifestations of his desire. Gravity gives a material form to bodies to manifest the idea of bodies. Radioactivity gives spiritual formlessness to the heavens for re-giving to earths as formed bodies. That is why when we dig up, this is a side note, in archaeology, forensic archaeology, we use radio, carbon dating. It's radioactivity gives spiritual formlessness to the heavens for re-giving to earths as formed bodies. Gravity begins its half cycle as the inward explosive reaction of an outward explosive reaction, thus fulfilling the law that all opposite expressions are born from each other and interchange to become the other. It ends its half cycle at a point of rest at the still point of magnetic light, which centers every material body, whether of microcosmic or macrocosmic dimension. Gravity then ceases when its motion ceases. There is no, quote, center of gravity, unquote, in nature. That's a false, a false theory, like many of our scientific theories and physics, theories of physics. It's a faulty theory built upon theory, built upon theory. So there is no center of gravity in nature. The centering light of every mass is still magnetic light. Likewise, the still axis of every vortex is still magnetic light. Radiativity then begins its half cycle from that point of rest and ends it on wave field boundary planes of magnetic light where gravity begins. Radiativity then ceases when its motion ceases. Both gravity and radiativity borrow their power to find balance and rest at their journey's end from the points of rest of their beginnings. They each repay their separate borrowings to the other at every point of their respective journeys. Thus each perpetually voids itself by giving to the other. At each journey's end, each opposite cancels itself out by giving its all to the other. It is then reborn as the other. Everywhere in nature, each action is its own reaction. Quote, death gives to life that life may live, and life gives to death that death may die, from the Divine Iliad. And let me see how much is left. Yeah, I'm going to finish this chapter this magnetic electric universe, the second half of this chapter in the next video, because this is a really long chapter. All right, I love you all, and I'll talk to you in my next video. Bye.